That is, I think, yeah, that is a great way to put it. That is a recovered fumble.
Yeah.
But yeah, happy to have you on the show. I was actually really excited to hear that the mayor of New Rochelle was coming on the show today. Because I mean, I don't know, we had a senator the other week, and then and now we finally got the big dog. I feel like. I mean, that's kind of how I like to put it.
That's very flattering. I'm sure the moment I walked in the room, you may have felt a little bit of a letdown because I'm nobody's idea of a big dog. It's not like I swooped in a helicopter or a fleet of black Suburbans. So it's pretty low key in city government. But I'm glad to be with you guys. You know, I've been on radio many times with WVOX, which is our local community radio station. It's the first time I've been on the Iona radio station, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you. It's always nice to have you. And a few weeks ago in March, we had Councilman Jared Rice. We were just talking about how important and integral the Iona community really is to New Rochelle. And we could just start off commenting on Iona College and what it means to New Rochelle.
Sure. Look, I mean, this is really one of the anchor institutions of the community, and that's true by any measure. It's one of the major employers in New Rochelle. It's one of the major population centers. It obviously contributes to the economy, particularly along the North Avenue corridor. There are lots of Iona alums who choose to remain in New Rochelle and become pillars of the community in one way or another. And the presence of Iona brings a lot of pride to New Rochelle. You know, there's a great deal of respect for the institution. A lot of folks who are cheering for Iona when it comes to basketball and other sporting events, but not just that, a real recognition that students play a part in our civic life as volunteers and as participants in all sorts of civic activities. Now, at the same time, there have been times when there's been some tension between the college and the community. Definitely. As is true in almost every
any college town.
Exactly. There's a normal sort of town-gown dynamic that involves sometimes cooperating and sometimes struggling a little bit. And certainly among residents of the immediately surrounding neighborhoods, they can be, on the one hand, the biggest beneficiaries of the college being here because there's a sense of vitality and energy. And at the same time, sometimes you find the biggest challenges there because we all know that students sometimes late at night are not necessarily acting the way a neighbor might want, and parking challenges and so forth. But what's notable, and I'll conclude on this, is that I really think in the last few years, through efforts on both the city's end and the college's end, and with big participation from the neighborhoods, we've succeeded in putting the relationship on a new and higher plane. There's a much more of a collaborative spirit, and I think that's evidenced by the degree to which the new residence hall that's being, the groundbreaking is actually going to occur next week, has really been embraced. Years past, that would have been enormously controversial. There would have been big fights. And because of a greater mutual understanding about what the zoning should permit, about what the right way to balance college and community goals ought to be, I think we're now able to work together in a way that benefits everybody.
No, I think that you touched on a few important topics there, and you spoke about that mutual understanding between students and the community at large in New Rochelle. But you also spoke about housing and zoning and the construction of the new dorm hall. But I recently read an op-ed in the Journal News last month, and there was a lady within the community around Iona, and she said, students fail to throw out certain things, or they fail to understand that this is a residential community too, and also that some buildings were knocked down for the expenditure that is the community dorm hall. And could you just explain how we might be able to mitigate those problems?
Sure. Well, first of all, just taking one step back, what's the value of a residence hall? For Iona, there's an obvious value because it creates a new product that can be available to students, which may attract students to the campus. And it's all part of an effort, you know this better than me, to really enhance the institution and make sure it can achieve the best kind of standards of excellence. From the city's perspective, there's a goal to really concentrate college development towards the North Avenue corridor and away from neighborhoods. On North Avenue, it makes more sense to have greater scale and density. You have the opportunity to incorporate commercial activities into a residential building, which in fact will be the case for the ground level of the new residence hall that's coming up. And by pulling it out of the neighborhoods, you reduce the points where there might be friction between students and other residents of the community. So that's really, I think, what has been accomplished here. It's a direction of the college's growth goals towards the place where it makes the most sense from everybody's perspective, and that's along North Avenue. So I didn't see this particular op-ed in the Journal News,
No.
and obviously nothing is going to be approved 100%. And in a democracy, people have every right to have competing views and to dissent and to disagree. But compared to the kinds of debates which occurred years ago, I will tell you that the level of acceptance and support for this development is just light years ahead.
Well, I kind of had a question about mostly the ground level. Some of the retail stores that were going to be on the main level of was that like a key factor in essentially, well, the whole design of the the dormitory itself? Was that something that basically North Avenue really wanted to stress, having those retail stores?
I think that was important on several levels. First of all, from an urban planning perspective, you want to have that kind of street level activity. You want to have people moving in and out. You want to have that feeling of commerce and energy. And if you don't have ground level retail, it can create a kind of a dead space. Right. Secondly, from a tax perspective for the city, the ground level will be taxable. And one of the big objections that's sometimes raised about college development is that it pulls property off the tax rolls, and so it ends up pressuring up tax rates for everybody else in the city. So in this case, there's no loss in tax revenue because the commercial establishments which already existed there are going to be replaced by entities that are taxable on the ground. And finally, although I don't know that this is finalized yet, when you lose something like the Mirage Diner, which lots of people really liked a lot, there's a hope at least that the ground level will have an eatery that can sort of quasi-replace the Mirage. I don't know if that's been determined conclusively, but I'm pretty sure that's the college's hope and intent, and I hope very much that that'll come to pass. So was the ground level retail the critical issue? No, I would say it was one of several issues that reflected a sort of a better approach to how we can plan college development in a way that respects the community fabric. And
just kind of going back, you talked about essentially a dead space that you wanted to essentially avoid. Is there any other recent developments other than this new dorm that you technically foresee possibly in the future anywhere else throughout New Rochelle? I mean, to avoid these possible dead spaces? You're constantly learning from experience, of course. Right. So just to give an example of something that I think was not planned well, if you look at New Rock City, the entire frontage along Main Street across from Iona College is just an impenetrable wall. It's made up to look like a series of buildings, and I guess that helps a little bit from a design perspective. But there's no way to get in and out of the building there, and as a result, you get a facility that's kind of inward looking, and I think that was a missed opportunity. So moving forward, we right now are planning the most ambitious downtown development in the city's history. We concluded a master development agreement with a group called RDRXR back in December. We are right now working with RDRXR on a public outreach process called crowdsourced placemaking, and they are simultaneously conducting market analyses and working with our planning staff so that later this year we'll have a specific plan that will be rolled out. We have direct agreements with the development group for the sites that are under public ownership. That's basically all of our parking lots and parking garages, as well as the train station and potentially the library. And then the zoning that would be adopted could encompass hundreds of private properties throughout the downtown area. So if we get this right, it's going to be a whole new ballgame for New Rochelle. Mixed-use development of several million square feet with new commercial activities, new residents, again, creating that sense of vibrancy and economic energy that's tremendously important for our tax base, for the goods and services that are available to New Rochelle residents and students, to our dining options, and to our ability to attract millennials and young professionals, which everyone is competing for, and in many respects is sort of the key to
future prosperity. So we've got a chance here as long as the economy holds for us. And as the mayor, I certainly want to do everything in my power to make sure we seize a hold of that opportunity.
Now, a few minutes in, for those people that are just tuning in to Political Gridiron, we're here with New Rochelle Mayor Noam Bramson. Noam, it's great to have you today. And in your last little question and answer segment, you were talking about economic development. And like any city, the financial crisis has hit every state, every city, blue, red, in between. And could you just explain how we're rebounding from that hit and how we can really create a whole new ball game, like you said before, and how Iona, perhaps even Iona College basketball, and how the construction of an arena here might play a role in that, but any business along North Avenue, how that plays a role in your economic redevelopment plan?
So it's a great question, and I think you phrased it well. Like pretty much every other community in the country, when the Great Recession hit towards the end of the last decade, it really had a huge impact on our fiscal condition, and of course, even more importantly, it had a big impact on lots of families and homeowners in New Rochelle. Lots of people who were struggling, and many people who still are struggling. So during that period of time, we had to take what was already a very lean municipal budget and make it even tighter. And that meant we reduced the size of our police force. It meant that we refinanced a lot of debt. It meant we canceled or deferred some desirable but non-essential programming. So we brought our workforce down to just about its smallest size in New Rochelle's modern history. And really tried to sort out what was essential from what was not essential. And that enabled us to weather the storm. Now, we're emerging from that period right now. Our latest financial news is pretty good. We have a fund balance that's basically our savings account that is increasing, and that is back up to what we hope will be a sustainable level. And we're talking now about whether we can improve our investments in things like community policing, infrastructure, measures that would promote economic growth. How do we employ that financial flexibility so that we can position ourselves best for the future? And of course, we're mindful of the interest of taxpayers. We've been adhering to the New York State tax cap since it was adopted, and New Rochelle actually right now has the 4th lowest city tax rate in all of New York State, which is a nice point of distinction. But to be clear, it's not as though we're rolling in cash. I don't want to give people a misimpression. The analogy I used, it's like coming off a long period of unemployment, and finally you get a modest paying job. So the crisis is over, but you still are dealing with the accumulated challenges of many years when you were feeling the pinch, and it's still necessary to be very careful with our money and to economize and be strategic about how we make investments. So the best way to give the city government more financial flexibility and to fund services and physical investments is through a growing economy. If you have a healthier business climate, that's going to spin off sales tax revenue. It'll enhance property values. It'll provide permit revenue. It does all the things that put dollars and cents into the city's coffers. So business development has been and will remain probably our number one focus because it links to everything else. So on North Avenue, when you have restaurants that are succeeding, in part as a result of Iona's meal plan, which I think was a great thing, great for students, great for the surrounding area.
And now recently Texas Roadhouse has been added to that down over at New Rock.
Is that right? See, I didn't even know that, so I'm glad to get the news. So listen, the more restaurants, the better. And if you go a little farther south on North Avenue, we just approved 2 mid-sized residential developments, both which will be a market rate rental, and in an area of the lower North Avenue corridor, which I think has often been thought of as somewhat depressed. And it's a very good sign that there is an effort now among entrepreneurs to make a significant investment there in a way that really might upgrade the corridor. So we're excited about that. And as I said, the master development agreement downtown has even greater potential. So if we get it right, then we'll have a city that people enjoy more and that provides the sort of self-sustaining economic activity that lets us fund all the good things we want to do.
Well,
thank
from,
you. We will be back soon. We'll go to a quick commercial break. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, we will.
All right.